Hi, so here we go. We're gonna start off now, and I'm gonna UV map this cube so I can spit out the data and apply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to each of these separate surfaces or sides of the cube or face of the cube. First thing I want to do is I'm going to take the top one again. I'm going to say face mode, apply that in the white. I'm going to come over to the UV editor, and with that gizmo already selected, I'm going to just select in the center and just drag this one out over here. Okay. I'm going to do the same for this side. So it's exactly the same. This one is going to be in the X direction. And if you want to save time, you can actually select both sides because they're both going to get the same UV. So if I shift select that side on that one, I can just show you how to do it. If I say apply in the X direction, there you go. I've now got two sets of UVs applied, and if I want to move them, I can either drag them both at the same time, but obviously they're sitting on top of each other, or let's go back to view 6. I can deselect, come to the UV editor window, and if I click on this little command over here, which is called Move UV Shell Tool, I can click on it, select a UV face, and it will allow me to move a UV face separate from any other UV face. See, so there you go. I'll just select this one. Oh, sorry, there you go. Allows me to move it. And then I hit W just to come out and go back to normal move mode. Now, the other UV faces I've got to map is that one and that one. And again, these are going to be in the Z, so apply. Go to my UV editor, say Moose Shell Tool. Let's move that one up there, that one to there. There we go. And then and hit W to come out of that. Last but not least, let's select the bottom one. And we're going to say that's going to be another Y. Apply and move that over there. And deselect. And you can see you should end up with 6 sides or 6 squares, and that's correct. I've got 6. Now, they're all the same size, but they're not laid out in any method or any plan that I can use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to Move UV Tool, and I'm going to arrange these in such a way that I can create my cube. Not particularly scientific, but you can see that right now I've got them laid out, and this is actually the classic shape. If you used to draw 6 cubes or 6 squares on a white sheet of paper and then cut it out, you'd probably cut it out in this kind of cross shape. You could actually even do it as the T shape. A lot of people learn how to do it as a T shape. And if you was to take this layout plan and then fold this into a cube, you'd actually end up with the 2 sides there, and this would form the side, the top, and the offside as it came together to create a 3-dimensional shape. Nothing wrong with that. So, you know, it's perfectly fine for you to do that. What we do need to do, though, especially for games, is we need to make sure that all our UVs sit within this top left-hand quadrant, and we also need to make sure that we make the best use of our UV texture space. So if I was to just come into this window now, I'm going to hit W to come out of the Move Shell tool. I'm going to say UV. I'm going to click drag all the UVs, and I'm going to hit R to scale it down so it sits inside it. And you can see as I'm scaling down, it's changing the actual size and scale of the visuals on the cube. I'm going to hit W just to reposition it inside, and I've got the one sticking out there. There we go. If I zoom in, You see I've got a UV cube, sorry, the square completely laid out inside the UV coordinates page, and every side is roughly the same resolution or same pixel depth visual resolution to each other. So what that means is that the letters, numbers and grids on one side of the cube are exactly the same size and scale as any other side. Obviously this one's flipped backwards, some are rotated and flipped and things like that, but we can sort that out later. So that's how you would create the UVs for a square that have each face unique. And then what I can do is actually spit this out so that I can see a different piece of material on a different face. So obviously this green one here is that face, this red one is either this one or this one depending on where I'm looking, and this blue one is this one over here. Now this is one method of doing it, but it's not very efficient. It's not an efficient use of the space. So what I really should be doing is trying to remove this dead space here and remove this dead space here. So what I can do is if I say move UVs, I'm going to move this one over to here, I'm going to move this one over to here, and if I select them all and then say scale and then move, you can see that what I managed to do is just by repositioning those two surfaces so that I end up with a 3x2 grid layout for the 6 sides, I actually get more real estate, more texture mapping space per square as opposed to what I had before. And all my dead space, all my unused space is now here, so I can actually put more detail or another texture into that space. So this is just a method that we use in games that allow us to increase the pixel depth ratio or the surface ratios of an object, and use up the amount of make better use of the material space that we have. Now what I'm going to do now is I've got my UVs laid out. Before I do anything else, I'm going to say object mode, and I'm going to delete my history. So I'm going to say edit, delete by type history. That just cleans out the buffer there of my stack. And now I'm going to export this UV layout of this cube so that I can actually paint on this within a 2D package and put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 into these surfaces. So to do that, go to the UV editor and say UVs. I'm going to select those UVs, and then I'm going to say polygons, UV snapshot, and I'm going to browse to where I want to save that data. I want to save it into textures, and I'm going to call this one wire out V1. Sorry, V1. There we go. And I'm going to make this, let's make it 512 by 512 pixels in size. Keep aspect ratio, keep anti-alias, and my file format is going to be Targa. There we go. I'm going to say OK, and then I'm going to actually, I don't actually have to check. It's just checking down at the status bar. It said it's actually saved it out, so I actually don't have to check that. And what I am going to do now is I'm going to call up Photoshop, which I've already got running in the background. I'm going to say open. It'll take a little bit of time. And let's just go to there we go, a little bit of a try. There we go. I'm just going to open up that texture, and there you go. So what you can see here is, I've just got it there just to show you how it matches. So on the left, you've got this is the UV coordinates inside the UV texture editor, and on the right, this is the Targa black and white image, which is basically ignoring the reference grid texture and just showing you the UVs as white edges. And the cool thing about that is, now that I'm in Photoshop, there's a couple of things I gotta do. First thing is, let's get rid of that as a locked layer. Second thing is go to my channel box, and I will have an alpha because I'm using a Targa and I generated an alpha by default. Just going to delete that alpha channel. There we go. And now I'm going to create another layer. Let's give it a color. Dark green. I'm just going to fill that. There we go. And this one, the original image, I'm going to say make that one a multiply layer. And you can see it's multiplying it and showing the green. It's knocking out the white and keeping the black. And I'm going to say invert, just to invert the black to the white. And now we end up with the white being knocked out and the black being the actual lines. And that's just a quick way of me switching it so that I can then drop in another layer. Say brush, and I'm just going to literally take my Photoshop brush. I'm just going to say it's a little bit low. Paste here. There we go. That's a little bit not really sharp enough. Let's make that a sharper looking brush. I'm just going to switch off my smoothing. Make it harder. There we go. So just made it a little bit harder, and I'm going to say one, two. Just going to try and choose different colors so I can see it nice and clearly. Green might be a bit weird. 3. 4. Here we go. 5. And last but not least, this 6. And now to see the final result, I need to save this as a texture map. And just to show you, just gonna create a text line. I'm gonna say in black letters, this is dead space area. I think my font is really huge, so let's just knock that down to 24. There we go. What I've done is I've just put that there so you can see that I'm identifying area which is dead space or spare space. And if I do file, save as, I'm going to call that PSD. There we go. So it's wire1.psd. Now, before I save this out, I want to switch off my wireframe. So I'm just going to call this one wire layer. And I'm going to save that again. I'm going to switch that one off so that I don't save the wires, because those will actually come out as pixel data and I don't want that. And then I'm going to say File, Save As, and I'm going to save this one as a TGA. Go down to Target. I'm going to call it Numbers Map. I'm just going to save that. It's saved as 24-bit TGA. Yeah, that's fine. And now if I go back to Maya, let's switch this back to the Hypershade. So panel, Hypershade. And you can either reload it onto the material, onto the reference material, but I'm actually going to say New Blend, double click, go to the colors, color bar, click on the checker box, File, click on the folder and say numbers.tga. I'm going to open that up and you should be able to see them there. We can clearly see it. If I select the object, which is a cube, and I right click on my material and say assign to selection, there you go. We now have a cube which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each of the sides. And I'm going to just switch this Hypershade back to the UV texture. UV texture editor. And obviously where I've got dead space, there's no UVs there. Now, that's me just using a basic UV map and planar mapping for each side. The interesting thing is you can see that some of the UVs are the wrong way, or some of the faces look the wrong way. Like number 1 is working, number 5 is working, number 6 is working. Number 2 is definitely not working, number 3 is not working, and number 4 is not working. So in this situation, you could UV map those sides that aren't working, like reapply the planar mapping to those sides. But it's much more simpler and easier just to use the tools. So if I come to my UV editor, I can literally say move UVs, which is allowing me to select that side. You can see as I move the number 4, I can move it over to number 3, so you can select any of the others, but I want to keep it over number 4. But it's obviously flipped horizontally or flipped in the U. So what I can do is come up here to my flip selected UVs in the U direction, and it actually shows you that it's horizontal in the little icon. And if you click it, there you go. You see I've flipped my number 4, so it's now readable. I can do the same for number 3. So if I move UV shell, flip, there you go, let's flip that number 3. Now number 2, let's see if that's the same thing. If I click it, flip, yep, there you go. And then hit W just to come out of that command, and there you go. The numbers are now the correct way on the cube. So some other tools that you can play around with the UV inside the UV editor at this stage is you can actually rotate each one of these UV sets. So if you want, you can select UVs. Let's click the number, actually let's click the number 1 because that's on the top. Oops, I think I might have had a little crash there. So what I'll do is I'll just pause it here and then come back and show you I can use these tools to create and manipulate the UV layers.